UFP, the United Federation of Podcasts.
Welcome, listeners, to the first episode of All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast on the United Federation of Podcasts. I'm your host, Patrick Devlin, and join with me, as will always be the case, my good friend Amy Nelson. Amy, how are you?
I am so excited to be here and say hello to our listeners and launch All Good Things.
Yes, exciting times in the podcast world.
It is. I mean, there's so much Star Trek that has already happened and so much Star Trek that is going to happen. I got some juicy details that I'm not allowed to share, but it's exciting times.
Well, that's a tease.
It is, isn't it?
Really is. So before we get any further, you can contact the network at contact@ufp.earth, on Twitter at @UFPEarth, and on Facebook. So, Amy, why don't you give the listeners a little background of you in podcasting?
Well, I started listening to podcasts probably 2015 and was really enamored with what I was hearing and got really involved and was meeting people at STLV, and they thought that I should get on mic. And now it's been 3 years later, and I have just absolutely loved it. What I love is podcasting with people, and you, Patrick, are one of them. So that is why we are doing this podcast together.
Yeah, so for the listeners who don't know, we are actually jumping from another network where we did a show called The Edge together. So my history is similar to yours. I started listening at the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, and I very quickly got to know, I became a patron over there on that network on Trek FM, and I got to know a couple of the people. I started a podcast, Briar Patch, that was very short-lived. Then I went on to do Warp 5 and The Edge with you, and now we're taking our talents elsewhere, like LeBron, and going to UFP, because I also have a podcast on UFP called Mickey's Marvels with Chris Tribuzio, who we just call Tribs over there, so I'm now going to move all my podcasting to this network and focus on doing those podcasts.
Yeah, I'll still be over on Trek FM doing Earl Grey, which is about Next Generation specifically. But why we wanted to do All Good Things is because we get to talk all Star Trek, which is very exciting and something that I don't get to do because at Trek FM it was specifically Discovery or specifically Next Gen, and there's just too many good things to talk about. So,
right, exactly. I was, like I said, I was doing Warp 5, which was Enterprise, and then the Edge, which was Discovery, and I'd like to talk about Enterprise. Just not all the time anymore, because I did it for a year and a half, or maybe even a little more. So, there's only 4 seasons to talk about. It's hard to talk about that every single week for a year and a half and not start doubling up on topics or saying the same thing over and over again. So this would be nice to expand and start to talk about a series maybe that I didn't even watch as much, like TOS, which I don't watch as much as I have Next Generation or Deep Space Nine or Enterprise or Discovery or any,
Voyager.
Even more importantly, the new stuff that's going to be coming out, Picard and the animated series and the short treks that pop up.
Yep. And the Section 31 and maybe a Pike, and there's just so much, and maybe movies of a 14th.
Yeah, it's just the realm of possibility is so large.
Yes.
That it just made sense that. Well, also, my partner on Warp 5 decided he was going to give up Warp 5, and I didn't want to go on with a new host. I'd like, let the new host have their own show with their own people, and then you were thinking about leaving the Edge for a while, and you were going to make the jump, and I thought pretty much the same thing. Why bring someone else in and then take, I just wanted to let them have their own show and not be a burden to them moving forward and doing it their way. So, and I would have missed doing it with you. So I'd rather come over here and do it with you.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, like, over here at United Federation of Podcasts, there's working with the people that I love, and you and Brandon, Zach, Tony. So it's just a win-win situation for us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And just for the people who are listening, that is not a knock on anyone who's taking over Warp 5 or The Edge. When we made this decision, we didn't know who those people were going to be.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I didn't want to work with anyone specifically. I just didn't want to work with anyone new. So
yeah. Well, and like you said, I'm very excited for who's taking over The Edge. Just getting in new talent, and it's time to let their voices shine and for them to share what they think about Discovery. So I was doing The Edge since the beginning. So that had been 2 seasons, and I'd done postcards, and I talked a lot about Discovery all the time. So
yeah, it'll be nice to move on. So we should have a first episode coming shortly after the release of this. And we hope you'll join us each and every week for it, or how would you say each and every other week? That seems weird.
How about, why don't you just join us each time?
Sounds good.
Every time, yes.
I swear I'm better with words than this. It's been a long week.
Well, listeners, why don't you join us on our Facebook page at UFP Earth? That's where we will be having all of our discussions for each and every episode that we have. And we would love to hear your thoughts and continuing the discussion on what we talk about here on All Good Things. So, Pat, where can people find you?
Well, we kind of went over that, but you can find me on Mickey's Marvels, where we are currently covering The Mandalorian, or just finished, and we will be doing other Disney IPs, all the movies and such. You can also find me on Twitter at MagicDrop5. There's no spaces, and the 5 is a digit, not spelled out. Under that same handle, you can find me on Twitch, where I play Diablo 2, Age of Empires, Portal sometimes, City of Heroes, and World of Warcraft. I'm a busy guy. And that's about it. So, Amy, where can people find you when you're not messing around here trying to figure out what we're going to talk about next week?
Well, you can find me still over on Trek FM, like I said before, on Earl Grey. You can find me on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson. You can also find me on UFP Earth on the Facebook page. I would love to build that community and get that going.
Please go to iTunes and leave us a star rating and written review. That will help others find our podcast.
At this time, we would like to thank our executive producers who make this all possible. They are Brandon-Shea Mutella, Ken Tripp, Zach Moore, and Tony Robinson.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you'll join us as we search for all good things.
This has been a production of MTMR Media Works.